D&D Story Time. In a game that I was DMing, there was a recurring villain named Desetti, and she had a lot of history with one of the player characters. We'll call him Frieza. So Frieza and Desetti had this mutual friend when they were in the army together. Frieza and Desetti were both tieflings, so they were both sort of outcasts. Their friend, however, was actually a human. Through some investigating, they found out that after Frieza was discharged, this mutual friend died right before Desetti's eyes, which sort of caused her to snap. Upon discovering this, one of my players looked at me and said, "That's it? What, was this her first time?" It was in that moment that I was reminded of why we all called him Doc. Doc was a field medic, and had probably been through that a dozen times or more. For all the veterans out there, and those of you still serving, keep rolling, my dudes. D&D Story Time! The fastest way that I have ever seen a beholder beaten was the time that the Bard and the Wizard of Divination teamed up. The first thing you need to understand is that divination wizards have a feature called Portent, which allows them to wake up, roll 2d20s, and keep those results, and use them for virtually anything later in the day. When faced with a beholder, who has a anti-magic cone of 150 feet, they simply made sure they were outside of its range, and then the wizard and the bard jumped through a spell called Dimension Door, which teleported them up to 500 feet, right behind my beholder. The bard used his new favorite spell called Polymorph, and the divination wizard said, "Oh, and he rolled a 2. So they turned him into a turtle. Keep rolling, my dudes. D&D Story Time. So recently I tried to press my improvisational limits as a dungeon master. So I typed myself up a homebrew boss creature based off of the Grundle from the Ghostbusters cartoons. Gave him some cool illusion and enchantment spells that I thought were befitting of a Grundle. Thought up a quick intro plot, and we were off. With the exception of the Grundle's stats and abilities and whatnot, I improv'd 2 entire sessions of D&D. Backstories for several NPCs, motivation for the Grundle, a whole village, and something of a lair for the Grundle's final fight. So after much investigation, saving many children, and killing the Grundle, the story comes to a close, and one player says to me, "You know, quality-wise, I couldn't really tell the difference between the stories you usually write and this." I'm not sure how to take that. Keep rolling, my dudes. D&D Story Time. One of my favorite things about DMing is choosing fantastic monsters. I'm a big fan of fiends and apparitions myself. Sometimes all you need is a giant crocodile. So the party was walking through a region called the Dark Forest. At one point they came to a clearing where there was a big pond and an overturned wagon with various goodies. Naturally, they decided to see what the wagon had. Well, everyone except for the cleric. He wanted to look in the pond. After failing his perception check, a giant crocodile bursts out of the water, bites him, and drags him into the pond. The party tries to rush to his aid, but they get attacked by 4 giant constrictor snakes. After a little while, the cleric is low on HP and he's about to suffocate. But again, bards. He dives into the water, and as soon as he sees the cleric, he polymorphs him into a plesiosaurus. 'Twas not long before they killed the croc. Keep rolling, my dudes. D&D Story Time. Appropriate. This is the story of the wizard who never learned. One campaign that I am currently playing in, we have a wizard who, for some unfathomable reason, likes to always be the first one to go through every door. And despite the urging of myself, the cleric, and the fighter, anytime we're trying to be cautious and examine things, he's just like, "I'm gonna go through the door." And then one day, he opened a bad door. Waiting for him on the other side was a specter with life drain, which immediately hit him for more than his maximum hit points. And then the wizard proceeded to fail his constitution save, meaning his max HP was permanently reduced. The boy straight up died.
Despite the DM's merciful revival, he still goes through every door first. Keep rolling, my dudes.